that bar.
That extra gear, that first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear. And today we have the privilege of sitting with Clarke Singer. Clarke is, I don't want to say a dinosaur. No, I'm just kidding. No, but coached for a long time.
Sure.
But been coaching for a long time. And you started at a young age. For those who don't know,
1994.
94.
94 full time since 94.
So just a couple years ago.
Going on, 25 years.
Yeah.
Almost, a little more.
Now, for those who don't know, Clarke obviously has coached, for Western for years. But I'm really interested in how you got started in coaching. So for you, born and raised Stratford, Ontario, right? So
yes.
Not far. Played junior hockey and stuff, and then kind of how did you get? First of all, how did you get into hockey? Number one, like brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, moms, dads. Like how did you kind of get pushed into the game?
No, that's a good question. Honestly, I played house league for a long time. Like we moved from a small community of Melverton, Ontario, which was maybe 20 minutes north of Stratford, and what would they be like? whatever Saturday. I think there's 1,200-1,300 people that lived there back then, and so played hockey there. And then my dad, because of work, ended up moving to Stratford, and he traveled a fair bit with work. And my mom actually didn't drive, so we ended up just enrolling me in like house league in Stratford when I was grade 5, 6, and I played there a little bit, and every Saturday morning, the typical house league hockey type of thing. And was fortunate enough to the travel coach come out to a game one day and say, hey, would your son end up come and play for us, or maybe halfway through the year? And my parents said no. So no, he's just going to play Saturday mornings.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. So, and then I think fortunately enough, he, and I really didn't know any different because I was from Melbourne. I didn't realize the quality of hockey, the difference in it. And then I think finally they relented. So I would have, it was maybe Major Pee Wee, Major Pee Wee halfway through the year that I joined, the Stratford AA All-Star travel team, and was fortunate enough to play there through my minor hockey career. And I had an opportunity to play with Tim Taylor, who you would know.
Oh yeah.
So Tim was
sure.
Tim would be a 69.
Yeah.
I'm a 68 date of birth. So fortunate enough to play. I don't know whether I played 1 or 2 years midget with Tim, but he obviously went on to great things with the Knights, and obviously in the NHL, and now scouting, Stanley Cup winner, I think, a couple different places maybe. So so minor hockey career in Stratford. And then at that time, I would say the Stratford Culletons, the junior B team in the Midwestern Junior B League, as it was known then, was probably one of the preeminent junior B teams in Ontario.
Yeah, they've got a crazy rich history, Like how good they were over years, and how many players they pumped out to college and stuff like that.
And you know what? Especially when I was young, especially sort of from my Major Pee Wee year through, a few years after I graduated there, but they had, I remember, Ed Olchuk, Mike Peluso, Rob Blake, Nelson Emerson, Garth Snow played goal there, former GM of the Islanders played there, crazy number of people there. So, got an opportunity to play some junior B there with that team, and really enjoyed it. I was not a great player by any means. They had a lot of outstanding import players who went on to, I would say 95% of the good players at that time with Stratford went on to the NCAA ranks to play, on a scholarship down in the U.S. And then I graduated high school and ended up going to Western, and I went out to skate with the London Diamonds at that time because I was going to live in residence here in London, and didn't have a vehicle, so didn't really think I could travel back and forth to play in Stratford. And fortunately enough, went out to a Diamonds practice. They signed me the first practice and ended up, getting named an assistant captain with London and playing there.
Cool.
And, talking a little bit to the coach of Western at that time, it was Barry Martinelli. And, I think we had a pretty successful year and, playing junior B. And that was, I think that was kind of the end of my minor hockey career or junior hockey career at that time. And at some point during that year, I kind of got the bug for coaching. There's a fella I got to know. His name was Craig McCarthy. I don't know if you would know Craig McCarthy. No. Craig McCarthy's from London. played junior B for the Diamonds, really good player, and ended up being a very young coach of that team that I was on. He might have been maybe only early 20s coaching the London Diamonds, and learned a lot from Craig, got to know him really well, and really sort of started the love of coaching in that, that last year of junior. And I believe, I know that's a long ways back, but I think in the year I graduated junior, I was, hopefully going to go and play for Western, try out for Western. And Craig had said, hey, would you have any interest in coming on board and helping coach? And, talking to Barry about, opportunities that might come at Western, I figured that, there might not have been, they had some great teams there, and probably I wouldn't have that much opportunity to play or even make the team. So I ended up deciding to forego my playing career at that time and started coaching with the London Diamonds at that time, our London Nationals now.
Yeah.
So that would have been the first start to it.
That is. Now, how hard was that decision? Because when you played your whole life, obviously, or you know what I mean, you're a hockey player, to go from being a player to a coach. How hard was that to make that decision at that time? Or for you, was it pretty easy knowing that you kind of had a bit of a passion for coaching?
Yeah, very hard. And I think, like probably still happens in today's day and age, I really underestimated the quality of university hockey. And, there were, NHL draft picks there. Some guys who had played pro, had played for Barry, Western, at that time is still one of the top teams in the country. They had some great teams. So, I knew, after I was out a couple times looking at what they had, I knew that I would have, been in a position, if I even played at some point in my university career, I wouldn't have a huge role. And I thought I probably wouldn't enjoy that a whole lot. So, although it was difficult, I didn't think back or think twice once I decided to help out in London and join the Diamonds and work with Craig.
Oh, that's cool. Well, and it kind of maybe worked out for you a little bit, right? Some guys go on to play, never play after that. Some guys want to coach, never coach, and you've parlayed it into a 25-year career. So there you go.
Yeah. So it's it was I guess at that time, and I guess the other factor that was very unique and interesting to Western is being in the phys ed program at university there, or it's called the kinesiology program, which everybody would know, the science of sport per se. They had an undergraduate course or courses in coaching. So during my tenure with London and in my undergraduate degree, I was able to combine sort of the theoretical, aspects of coaching and the kin coaching classes with working in London. The practical side, cool. Helping out with them. And then they also had a master's program, which Barry ran. So I was able to move from, the undergraduate degree, because I'd always thought I was going to end up, I always wanted to be, I guess, a phys ed teacher. Yeah. That's what my plan was, as I entered university. And I ended up instead, after my phys ed degree, I entered the Masters of Coaching program with Barry, which was a 2-year program, and it was amazing. It was an amazing program, and I guess I lucked out in a way, because just as we were going to begin the year, my first year of the Masters, Barry got an opportunity to go over to coach in Europe. So kind of came quickly, and he went over to Trondheim, Norway, which is where I ended up a number of years later as well, coaching in the Elite Series over in Trondheim. And Barry kind of said, "Hey, Clarke, I know you pretty well. We had developed a relationship through, the undergraduate coaching courses, and as well as him getting to know me a little bit through playing." And he said, I've got an opportunity to leave here, but can I leave a lot of the admin duties to the program with you? And so it was, I sort of got hit in the face with a lot of responsibility, which was great. And then they ended up hiring a gentleman by the name of Reg Higgs to take over the actual on-site coaching role, the practices and the games. And Reg was a former NHL coach with New York and Philadelphia, and also coached CIU back then out in Regina. So he had a ton of experience. And so I had the opportunity to gain a lot of hockey knowledge through him, as well as understand a lot of the administrative aspects of running a university hockey program from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, because Barry had to leave. So I do a lot of the recruiting, travel bookings, fundraising, scheduling, all those aspects. So it was a quick introduction into coaching.
And young, like you were probably 23, 24?
Yeah, that would have been, even, right? Yeah, I would have been early 20s at that time, kind of just out of undergraduate. Yeah, so 22 maybe.
How did you find it going? Because a couple things I want to touch on with this, but how did you find it going as a young player, coming out of junior, getting involved with the university team where some of the players on that team are maybe a year or two younger than you, or almost like, kind of close to your age, right? So what was it like, being an assistant coach or being on the ice, helping out with practice or helping run drills, things like that, with players that are close to your age? Even in junior when you were helping out, they would have been kind of close to your age as well. But, how'd you find that dynamic? Was it tough to kind of play an authority role in that situation with younger players, or did it come pretty natural?
Yeah, probably more intimidating to think about it than to actually do it. And I think once you're, once you're out on the ice doing things, and you've told me, many stories of your opportunities in Washington with Carlson and Ovechkin and those guys, and you probably, thought about it more on the plane or in the coach's room than when you actually get out there. Once you're out there, you're doing many of the same things you would with our guys or with the TPH guys here or with local pros. So, I certainly, it was an adjustment, and I guess I was fortunate that I was an assistant coach. So I wasn't out there the first day yelling, demanding, giving instruction, but had an opportunity to, develop some relationships. I think that's what you want to do. It doesn't matter whether you're new to a job or any job or coaching, head coach or assistant. I had an opportunity to develop some relationships and probably gain some trust with some players before I started, giving them feedback and, running drills and doing those type of things. So, but overall, I think, all the young men I've worked with in my career have been incredibly accepting and generous in terms of relationship, building. And, that's one of the people always think about the X's and O's and you're one of the guys who, you look at skill wise and, you're one of the best in North America at that, but you also have great relationships with all the people you work with. And I think that's one of the things that I've forgotten about coaching is that you can't just know how to run a power play or teach a person how to shoot. You have to, be able to develop a relationship with them and with your team to be able to be successful in this business.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, man. I think that's a massive, massive thing. And something that you say there, whether you're a young kid helping out with a minor hockey practice or you're going out with pros, you're right. The more you think about it and the more you dwell on it and the more you kind of have these ideas in your head of what it's going to be like, the harder it is. When you just go out there and you have confidence in what you can do, obviously you go out there and do it. I mean, then it usually just flows. I remember one of my first practices with Washington. I probably told you the story before, but I was running the first 3 drills of practice with the whole team, so the big club, and I remember did a little warm up, and then all the guys came into the board. And I'm just drawing on the board, like, hey, we're going to do this, whatever. And drills that are a little bit different because a lot of times at the NHL level, and same with you guys sometimes, you guys have a lot of skill practices. But with your team practices, you're doing like 3-on-2s or breakouts or D-zone coverage or power play. Same with the NHL. So I'm drawing up drills with like chips and I want you to sauce it here. I want you to open up your hips here, protect the puck here. So a little bit different. So I'm drawing it up. And I remember turning my head and looking. And just like kind of like I normally would do to any group. Like, hey, you guys got it? And I'm looking over and there's like Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and not to name drop, but I was like shitting my pants. Like I was fine drawing on the board. I was fine getting on the ice. I was fine running a little warm up. Then when I was doing the first drill, I remember looking, I'm like, holy shit, man. And I'm looking like, you guys get it? And they're like, yeah. And I just like, that was one of those moments where I was like, oh man. But then once you get into the drill and you get into it and it's all good. Right. But you definitely go through a lot of those times when, you're looking at these people and whether it's a junior player over a pro guy, you're like, holy shit, like, is this guy seeing right through me or is he buying what I'm selling here?
Yeah, no, well, and I think, one of the things you talk there just for a minute, it's, you talk about the mental side of things, right? And you just said, you're worried about it and that's nothing to do with who you are or what you can teach or it's kind of the mental limit you place on yourself. Sure. And I think, in all of the players I've dealt with, it's one of the biggest weaknesses of players these days is, they kind of have they see themselves doing only so much. They maybe don't believe they can do more. And there's no better example than when you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs and you see how players change their game and expand what they can do. And it's not a physical expansion, it's a mental expansion 100%. Of what they do, right? And so part of coaching is getting, as you said, related it back to what you said with with those guys is just, believing you can do a little bit more, not just kind of limiting yourself to, just teaching the guys at Western to open up their hips here, teaching Ovechkin to open up his hips too, right?
No, but yeah, and I think that's the one thing. We were talking about this the other day with some guys, and I was like, the biggest thing that separates elite players from good players. So let's say, NHL, AHL, college, whatever, is that mental part. Like, have they overcome obstacles? Do they know how to like push a bit harder? Do they know how to get out of a slump? Do they know how to ask for help? Like all those little things, right? And I think to your point, I think the mental part of the game, all those players are pretty good. You look at your roster, like they can all skate, they can all shoot. They, some are a little bit better, there's no doubt. But man, the ones that'll like work for you and battle through stuff and expand their game a little bit and change the way they play if they have to, like those are the players to me that are going to make that next level and make that next jump if they want to,
Right. Yeah, and I think I heard this story just relating to the exact same thing, and I'm sure you've probably heard this and you can build on it, but one of the stories I heard at a coaching clinic a couple of years ago was, like when you look at, I think the question was asked, what is the difference between a top 2-line AHL player and a bottom 2-line NHL player? Not the Marners and Matthews and Ovechkins and those guys and McDavids, but what's the difference between, those guys who play in the bottom 2 lines of the Leafs and the top 2 lines of the Marlies? For the most part, it's not their skating, it's not their slap shot, it's not, their physicality, because those guys, when you get to that level, it's all probably close, right? But it's their ability mentally to bring their best game night after night, where the AHL guy might be able to bring his A game, maybe 5 nights out of 10 games or 6 nights out of 10. That NHL guy who's playing on the bottom 2 lines, they can bring it 8 or 9 times, out of 10. And that does nothing to do with your physical ability. It's what we were just talking about. It's the mental ability to do that. And still, as you see with young athletes, and I see with the teams I've had the opportunity and the young men I've had the opportunity to work with, that the mental side of that game and being able to do that is so critical. Like what separates, we play a lot of Friday, Saturday nights. And what separates, somebody's game on a Friday night from a Saturday night? It's the same player. You haven't improved their hips or their saucer passing, in 24 hours, right? Yeah. It's the mental side of things, right? And I think that goes underestimated a lot when you look at the, minor hockey, junior hockey these days. I think they realize that once you get to pro, and they spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's something that's probably underestimated by a lot of people at at the lower levels.
Well, and I always preach this, and I sound like an old man here, but I think it begins at 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old with your parents. Mm-hmm. And I think those little obstacles that you force your kids to go through, those little things that you force them to kind of overcome and talk through, I think that starts that foundation. You know what I mean? Because you've seen it as well as I have, and any coach out there has seen. You get players that have been coddled the whole way through, and man, they are mental mushrooms, when they're older. They can't battle through stuff. They have no idea. They're looking for answers. They're looking for mom or dad to help them pave the way here, and I think that's a big thing. One of the examples I want to give about exactly what you said about that AHL, the NHL, and that mental part of it is you've ran drills. Any coach out there that's listening or parent that's watched practice, you've seen a drill run. It's a gong show. Kids are missing passes. They're not running their routes right. Coach calls them in, just puts them in check for a second. You guys are better than this. This is bullshit. You can't be doing this. They go out, the same drill, same kids, same everything, and it's tight. Yeah. Well, it's not that the kids got better because the coach yelled at them. It's all mental, right? It's are you focused? So that those NHL, that bottom 6, they're for the most part focused. Yeah. They're good. They're consistent, right? Where to your point, the AHL guys, not that they're bad players, they're really good players, but they just haven't maybe had that opportunity to get at that level and be consistent at that level yet, right? So I think, and again, that to me all comes down to the mental part of the game. And a lot of times in the AHL, you'll see, and let's say junior hockey getting called up to the OHL, or you'll see kids that get called up that maybe aren't the 50-goal scorer, but why'd that guy get called up? Because he's consistent at his role, right? Yeah. Maybe they needed that type of player, but he's consistent at his role. He knows his role. He's consistent with it. That's why he got the opportunity and you didn't. You know, and I think that's a big thing for players is knowing your role and being good within that role. You can always expand it, but knowing what you're good at and trying to, be the best you can at that role. And then once you get that dialed in, then you can always expand that role a little bit, right?
Well, and I think that's another thing when you look at, players improving and getting better. And I know, offense, wins games, offense gets you big paychecks and that type of thing. But I think the one thing when you move from level to level, whether it's minor minor midget to the OHL or junior to college, or college to pro, or OHL to pro. Like you're always not going to be in the exact same role, right?
Sure,
like a great minor midget player who's a second round draft pick in the OHL, 6 years later he might still not be first line left wing playing on the power play, right? He might be a third line left wing penalty killer at pro, right? Yeah. So I think it's always important for those young people as they're growing up to continue to refine all their skills, whether it's checking, angling, back pressure, positioning, and all those types of things that will help you as you move on, not just running the power play and carrying the puck wide and doing those type of things. There's a whole different gamut of skills that you have to be good at as it's just going to improve your opportunity as you move on to higher levels.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I mean, even, speaking from personal experience, but I remember, anybody that went from like junior to, I was fortunate to get a scholarship. So you go down, you got recruited, you're getting money for school. And so you kind of think, there's a freshman class coming in, we're all pretty big dogs, whatever, right? But then you get to college hockey, like this is obviously, we knew it was going to be good hockey, but my first year of college, I played 11 games. Like I sat out every second game or third, you know what I mean? Like, so mentally, like I was in a grinder. I went from being, one of the better players on my junior team, getting a scholarship, being the guy. And then now I'm a pigeon at the bottom of the totem pole here, trying to just make my way through it. Right. But I look back on that year of hockey, and that was probably the best year of hockey mentally for, I wanted to quit. I wanted to transfer schools. I hated my coach, but I look at that year made me so much stronger for the rest of my career. Like I didn't have a long career, but the rest of it, like the rest of college and pro, no, I could get beat up by a coach and I could battle through it, no problem, and I could ask questions. I could get feedback. But that going through that year at the time, I was losing it. I wanted to quit. I wanted to go home. I remember calling my mom being like, I'm coming home. Like we had some issues. My dad got sick and stuff. So I'm going to come home, help you. My mom's like, no, not a chance. You were staying there. You're battling this out. And thank God she did. Like she's a very strong woman, but thank God she did, because a lot of parents would be like, oh man, I know it's brutal. You're not playing. This is brutal. We'll get you to another school. Let's go. Yeah. And I would have transferred out, and that may have been a game changer for me. I may not have ever met you. Who knows?
Because that was a game changer.
No, it's all those those little experiences that you have, and I'm sure you've gone through a ton in your life where you look back on it now and you're like, that sucked. Like that really sucked. But man, I learned a lot from that. I've become a better guy or a better person.
Well, it's probably one of the first big hurdles or hills you had to climb in your life, right?
Yeah.
And I think you always have a decision on that hill as you're climbing, because the top half is always harder to climb than the bottom half, right? So you have to persevere and get through it, or you can back off and jump off, right?
There's always outs, right? Like when you really think about it, whether it's the extreme measure of just quitting and leaving it all, or whatever it is, right? So there's always alcohol, whatever you're going to get into to get those outs. But I think if you can battle through it and really like get to the top of that hill and then look around and say like, okay, I got through it. It wasn't that bad. Now let's figure out how we can keep going.
And I think one of the biggest changes is in coaching over the years, to kind of turn it back to that, is that I think one of the things that I think has changed is that now when players get into those positions, I mean, I think you always rely on your parents, but now I think, as we talked about relationships with coaches and players, I think those are opportunities on that hill when you're there that you can talk to the player. Not that you didn't before, but I think, in the past when you and I were younger and that type of thing, like you just had to deal with it on yourself. You weren't going to go talk to your coach about this, right? Or ice time or challenges or how come not on the, you took it or you didn't, right? And so now I think coaching has evolved and relationships have evolved, I think, where you can now have some help up that rest of the way. Right. Or understand why you're there. And I think that helps facilitate, the players to move up a little bit easier and to kind of get over those hurdles, because there's always another one, right?
Yeah.
There's a smaller one, there's a bigger one, and it might not be in sport. It might be in life, might be with your kids, might be with your parents, might be with your family, might be with your job, as so many people are experiencing through the pandemic. But there's always another hurdle. And I think every one you get over helps you with the next one. You build character and perseverance, and you learn strategies to help you get through it. Versus just, okay, I'm jumping off here.
And I think you're right. I think the new age coach and coaches like you, and I know this just because I've coached with you and I've known you for a long time, but you've evolved. Like the way you coach, the way you approach a team, the way you approach individual players has changed a lot over the years, and we'll get into that in a second. I think that is the biggest thing with coaches that are still relevant now and still around, because you have a lot of coaches that the game passed them by, and they couldn't make it anymore. Players are done with them and they got gassed out of whether it's the NHL, college, junior, whatever it is. But in order to stay in the game for a long time, you got to be able to evolve, whether it's a skill coach, assistant coach, doesn't matter. And I think that's a big thing. But you're right, like back in the day, you know, and there still are old school coaches still kicking around. They're still out there. And this is more advice for young kids. But I remember that first year when I wasn't playing at all, I got into a rhythm where I would play on Friday, let's say, and I'd sit out Saturday. I'd play one of the games. Yeah. Every single game that I sat out, I would go to the coach's office before the game. And I'd knock on his door and be like, hey, coach, what do I need to do to get better? I was not doing it to get like crappy answers from my coach. I was doing it just so he knew that I wanted to get better. Yeah. And by the end of the year, he was dodging me. He wouldn't go to his office. He was like somewhere else in the rink. I would track him and find him. Yeah. And I remember that it was a funny story, but one of the last series of the year, I did every single game I sat. I went and asked him, this head coach, he's making the decisions. And so did that. And then one of the last games of the year, after the game, I go in the locker room after, and I'm happy for the boys and stuff, but obviously you're bitter, right? I don't want to play. I'm competitive. And one of my buddies comes up to me, he's like, what happened? Like, what'd you say to coach? I'm like, I just asked him why I wasn't playing. He's like, well, coach came in, his whole pregame speech today was all about you. And like, there's a guy out there who wants to play. You guys are, it's a privilege to play or whatever. And so it's kind of like, maybe it took the whole year, but my message got sent eventually. And I don't know why I did this, but this is a message for young kids. If you don't know why you're not playing, or you don't know why you're on the fourth line or not on the power play, go ask questions. And you might get crappy answers from the coach that, oh, you got to be stronger in your stick. Okay, fine. Then work on that. And all right, I'm doing that, and show them that you're working on those things, but keep asking those questions because I guess the question for you as a coach, when you have players that are, and I know you've had these over the years where they're in your office every second day asking like, what do I need to do? Do you like, what's that like for you as a coach? I know sometimes it gets long and you're like, oh my God, like I can't talk to this kid anymore. But overall, is there a fine balance there between too much and not enough from some of the players as far as asking for advice and asking to?
I don't think it's ever too much in terms of too much conversation. I think the more you can build a relationship and have a conversation about whether it's school, hockey, the personal side, it's better. I think the fine balance is trying to be positive, right? Trying to be positive and continue to motivate that player, not just saying, hey, you're not very good, you didn't play the other night. It's just finding that balance between honesty, teaching, and positivity, especially if there's multiple conversations the same week, the same month, the same half with the same player, because, a lot of those little things that you talk about, they don't change overnight, and I think that's one of the issues sometimes is, players want not only immediate feedback, but immediate results and an immediate change. And sometimes that just can't happen. And we although and I think we're also fortunate where I coach and that we can afford to have a little bit of the long view of things, and we make decisions for the moment or the game or the week, but we also try to make decisions for the long term. And we don't look at an individual player coming in and saying, hey, this player, you have to be the best player and contribute the most in the first month of your career. We want them to be a 4-year Mustang or a 5-year Mustang and be the best when they leave. And depending on where you come from, what your experience is, you're in a different situation there. But those, conversations are always welcome. It just sometimes, and I try to be as positive as possible with the players when we talk about these things, and because you never want a player to leave your office without any hope. Right, like that's true, really challenging, especially nowadays. So you want to make sure you can be honest, yet I think try to be positive in your conversation with them. And you have to, and I think that the one thing is that I've learned is that everybody's entitled to their own opinion, right? Like every, the player does not have to have the same opinion as me. I don't have to have the same opinion as my assistant coach about a system or that player. And I think that's although the buck stops with the head coach, like you do have to respect the fact that people have their own opinion, and their opinion might be based on different things that you see. So you always have to respect what the player's saying, I think, and just try to be as honest as possible and have them leave with a little bit of hope and whether that's hope for the next game, as you talked about, or the next week or a month down the road. And I think one of the many challenges with our roster at Western is we usually carry 26, 27 players. And that means that there's some great young men and some great players who aren't playing every night, 6 or 7. And so that as the year wears on, it becomes, not a challenge, but you just want to make sure, and you don't want to have to, say a player's not playing Friday or Saturday night, you don't want to have to talk to them Thursday and have 3 conversations, because nothing has changed over the 48 hours probably, right? In terms of that. So there are, I think that's one of the most challenging parts about coaching, in terms of how you manage those messages and how you still create some belief and some motivation in those players. And I'm not going to say I do it right all the time, because, as you say, you're always learning, always evolving, because you do make mistakes. You do wish, I wish that conversation would have been a little bit better. I got to change my messaging a little bit next week. But I always try to listen, not just hear, right? I think some coaches, they just let the players talk and they're thinking about the power play, but you have to try to listen to what they say, and then try to provide some feedback based on that. But it's it's a lot more challenging with those type of things than running a 1-3-1 power play and that's the art of coaching, not the science of it. The power play is the science. The art of coaching is those player relationships. And I think if you look at the history of our program since I've been there, I think for the most part, and you could say this for a lot of programs, but I think we've always been a much better team and much better developed at the end of the season than halfay through.
Oh, for
and I think that's maybe, you're going to say it's because of the work you do with the guys. I'm sure.
Obviously,
I got that note to get that in there, but I think that's, because, and I know, it's not just a business at Western when we're fortunate. You look at the OHL, you look at pro, even some junior B programs or GOHL. The coach has got a winner. He might get fired. Right. So we're fortunate that we can have a little bit of a longer view on things than just having I better win both these games on Friday and Saturday or I might lose my job. So we're fortunate in the environment that we're in. And also we look at our environment, for the most part, we don't deal with parents a lot. And I know that you mentioned mom and dad a little bit, but I'm very fortunate, dealing with 20-year-olds and up. For the most part, I usually meet the parents in the recruitment period when they come for a campus visit. Obviously not during COVID time, but previously. Yeah. But for the most part, my conversations, for good or bad, whether it's school, hockey, it's with the players. So that, and that is a different dynamic than probably when they were within junior. So it's great for me, and I think it's great for them, in terms of being able to relay to me what they think and have that conversation with me versus a parent calling or having a meeting with a parent, right? So that I think that helps build a lot of relationships that we have. And certainly, although some conversations are challenging, it's much easier, I think, dealing directly with the player than dealing with a parent sometimes. And then there's a 3-way message versus just a direct message.
Yeah, definitely. One thing you said there that I think is really important for parents and players to understand is what's the long plan for that player, right? Now, if it's minor hockey, I get it's 1 year, so that's a little bit tough. But if you're in junior, hopefully you're there for 2 or 3 or maybe longer, 4 years. And college, same thing. But what is the law? And having a coach being honest with you, saying, listen, you're a freshman, you're a first-year player. You're going to get in, you're going to get some games, and we'll give you a bit of leash. And if you can make something out of that, you may get more opportunity. But you're a first-year player, and you're going to have to go through the process a little bit here, right? And I think that's a big piece of communication for those players. There's no doubt about it. But then that gives that player that hope that you talked about. Because I think that's huge. You leave a coach's office and he just berated you for 20 minutes and you're like, well, I suck. Yeah. He thinks I suck. And then that confidence goes down, and we all know, without confidence, it's hard to play.
Yeah, but I think, to be honest, I don't think many of those conversations happen anymore. The 20-minute berating, and I think that's, of course, I think they have to happen. But in my philosophy, I think that's more a team thing. Right? Like if you're upset with the team or upset with a group or a unit or something, that's a conversation you have to have with the
braid them in numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Try to get your message across to the group. I think the only real time that I think you would sit in with a player, if it was a more of a cultural problem, a discipline problem, where it was something that was affect, they were doing something off ice that wasn't appropriate. Or so. I mean, that's, we're involved the person more so than the player.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think when you're dealing with the player, sure, their plus minus might have been great. They might not have picked up the trail, or, it might have done it multiple times in a game. But I think at our level, that's more of a conversation versus a berating. Yeah. And a lot of times, unlike minor hockey or maybe a little bit GOJHL or in this area, I mean, you can provide a lot of video. So that's what we try to combine a lot of those things, conversation with the video to teach, because that's what you want to try and do. And I think, that's where maybe some of the messaging from a coach perspective has changed over my time instead of bringing a guy in and, going up one side and down the other. I would do that to my coaches, obviously, but but not so much to players, because I do think they get a fair bit of that through their careers. And I think, the other important thing we haven't really talked about, Blazer, is that, I have a situation where, a lot of junior hockey players at the end of their careers, when they're 18, I mean, especially 19 and 20, probably hockey's the biggest part of their day. Yeah. Right? When you look at, a London night or even a London national, right? Like sure. they might be taking the odd class here there, but for the most part, the focus of their day is going to the rink. Whereas as the players I have, they might have written 2 exams. They might have had to go get groceries, might have had to pay 3 bills online, sure. meet with the landlord, and then they come to the rink, right? So I want to make the arena between, 2:30 and 5, our workouts and our practices and our games, kind of the best part of their day. And I know it probably is, but, again, you want to get them excited to come to the rink and try to create a good environment, a good culture for them. And I think we really try to do that in practice and by the people we have involved on our staff, and, try to make that, which is a little different than junior, I think, for most guys. So when they come to university, it is quite a big an adjustment when they're looking at the academics and the stress involved in that, and living on their own cooking their own meals for the first time. And so I really want to make sure that when they come to the rink between 2:30 and 5 or 5:30, they're happy to be there and excited to be there, and it's a good part of their day thinking about all they've went through.
I think that should be the tagline for hockey, though. Let's make hockey the best part of your day. Whether it's minor hockey or, because even through this pandemic, a lot of the teams are just practicing. They can't play games. So they're playing like scrimmages or inter-squad games, but they have practice. And I was just talking to a parent the other day, and he's like, their practices are terrible. Our kids don't even want to go. It's so bad. And this is a AAA or like a AAA team. And I know, I know the coach that's involved with it, and he's vanilla, just no expression, doesn't laugh much, just, would rather play games. And you bring that energy to the rink, and that's going to translate right onto your players. You know what I mean? And I know firsthand, being on the ice with you guys and stuff, it is fun to be at the rink. The guys do enjoy it. The guys are excited to get on the rink. And for you, you're right. It is a different, a different spot to be, as far as like you got school. You got a lot of other stresses as being, a 21-year-old going to school and trying to get a degree and paying bills of it on your own, all that stuff. So I think it does wear on them for sure. And if you can have a fun environment at the rink, I think it's obviously massive for these young guys. Yeah,
and it's funny you just mentioned, and I know we haven't really talked a lot about minor hockey, but I think one of the the one piece of advice I would give to all minor hockey coaches is, and I've had the opportunity just like you to get to know a lot of them and to talk to a lot of them, is I find in general sometimes they're not that open to learning and to getting better, right? And I think that, I mean, you and I, just before this podcast, we're talking about podcasts and information. And, I think I'm constantly, probably like you, trying to gain more information, learn more, watch video, I've got a membership to a hockey coaching site called the Coaches Site.
That's a pretty sick site.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. So I try to watch a couple of videos, whether it's on culture, power play, player development. Every week, there's always new stuff going up there, right? And so, even having coached professionally for almost 25 years, I'm always trying to get better. And I think I owe it to myself and my program and my players. And I know you're the same, but it's funny. I sometimes talk to a minor Bantam coach, and they say, no, I don't need a new drill. I'm good. And I just wish sometimes in general they'd be a little more open to learning and getting better, because there's lots out there, as you know.
Well, and my thing too, if you're going to coach, and you went through this, so I'd like to touch on this a little bit. You went through as a father, and you watched your son and daughter both play hockey at high levels, like playing AA and AAA and stuff on the way up. You've had, unfortunately or fortunately, sometimes had to sit on the sidelines and watch practice, and probably, losing it a little bit at certain things, and no knock on the coach, but just, man, this could be so much better. You know what I mean? And I'm sure sometimes you're like, this is awesome. This coach is great and he's doing a really good job, you know? And I just wish that minor hockey coaches got into coaching minor hockey for the right reasons, meaning not so they could win games and win an OHA or a whatever championship, but so you can make players better. And you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the misses. And going back to what you're saying, I think they don't seek out advice. They don't seek out help. They don't, like, everyone's feels like at times they got this, I would say, like the secret sauce. They've got this, like, there's no secret sauce. And the more we share and collaborate with each other, the better we're going to get. You know, and I look at how I coached 5 years ago and did skill development 5 years ago to what I do now. It's crazy. From a year ago to now, it's way different, you know, and just certain things I key in on or I approach on or whatever. So I think it is important for coaches to be open and, like, you got a 25-year professional coach. You might be able to learn one or two things, and vice versa. You may pick up a thing or two off him.
100%.
Right. And 100%. That's what excites me. Like, is learning stuff off other coaches as well. You know, now when you went through it, as far as being a dad now, like going through minor hockey with your kids, you know, what were some of the biggest things that you noticed through minor hockey? Was it the parents being a little bit too involved and getting a little bit too crazy? Was it the coaching overall? We're not being specific to anybody, but when I look at minor hockey coaching right now, I'm like, it's awful. Like, overall, some coaches are awesome and they are very, very good. But if you went to any rink and watched 6 practices in a row, it's mind blowing. Right. It's mind blowing on what they're doing and the drills they're doing that we did when we were kids. Some of them, like, it's you know, it's awful. But what was it like, kind of as a dad, going through it? And I know you coached a lot of minor hockey too while you're going. But, you know, was there any kind of advice that you give to parents or coaches as far as, aside from, you know, collaborating and being more open to suggestions and stuff? But
yeah, I think, well, one of the things I want to say before I answer that question, I think one of the things about both minor hockey parents and coaches is they concentrate too much on the player. They forget the player's a person. Right. They forget it's not just number 8. It's not our right winger on the power play, or, you know, our number 1 left defenseman, or our number 1 goalie. They forget that the kid's 8 or the kid's 9 or the kid's 10, or, you know, like you forget, like, and we all have tough days at our jobs and when we're not the best. Right. And I think sometimes we forget that who we're coaching are people first, not players first. And I think if we're able to remember that a little bit, you know, I think it would help everybody. Sure. The parents and the players, right? Yeah. And I think that's the first thing. But you know, I learned a lot. You know, I think I learned a lot, and I was fortunate in that I was able to be involved because of being a professional coach in a lot of my kids' experiences in hockey, whether as a manager or just running a couple practices. So that was amazing. But, you know, I wish I would have probably been a better hockey dad overall. And I've learned a lot. And I think what my experience evolved into and what I learned was, you know what, the last few years, just enjoy driving to the rink with them. Mm-hmm. Because we don't, you know, as they get to midget and older, you don't do that anymore. Sure. That's a great time to spend with your kid, not drawing power play plays on the screen of the Chevrolet Tahoe.
I'm laughing because I can see myself doing this in a couple of years.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, now make sure when their center has the puck, you drive to, you know what I mean? Like, you know, just, hey, talk to them. And, you know, I think, you know, as I evolved into it, I just enjoyed being there and being a dad, just having a coffee, watching practice and not trying to evaluate the practice or, oh my God, Owen missed the pass. Oh my, you know what I mean? Like, so I probably enjoyed it a lot more at the end than I did at the beginning, because I probably put too much pressure on my kids to be the best player on the ice and to not just be a person. So I think just enjoy being there, because it ends. Like, I'm at the stage, our minor hockey careers with our kids are older, you know, because they're going on 18 and 21. So they're out doing things on their own now. So I would give advice to coaches to make sure you don't forget about the person, number one. And sure, that doesn't mean you can't teach them or give them instruction or get mad at them the odd time, but, you know, remember they're a person, not just a player. Yeah. And number two, you know, if you're a hockey parent, like, and I know it's been said many, many times before, but the chances of your son or daughter, regardless of how much development you do with Dwayne Blais, being Connor McDavid, is pretty low. So enjoy being at the rink with them. Yeah. You know, spread out what you do with them. Go skiing, go golfing, like do some other things with them, and just enjoy being a parent instead of putting so much pressure on yourself and on them when you get to the arena. And I know there'll be a million arguments about that from all kinds of different people, but just enjoy what you're doing with your son or daughter, whether it's at the rink or at the pitch or whatever.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really good advice, number one. But as a older guy, but have young kids, as I'm going through it now with them kind of just starting to play sports and things like that, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like especially when they're playing hockey, because that's a sport that I know well, and you want to, like, I really want to give them advice, and because I've been around guys like you and other people, and I've heard a lot of this before, and I've given this advice before, kids telling a dad, like, you got to relax, you can't tell anybody this. Yep. And the caveat at the end of that is, one day you're going to see me at the rink, banging on the glass, yelling at my kid, you got to come over and tell me to stop, right?
Yeah.
But for me now, like, I bite my tongue a lot, and my kids don't play any high level. They're just like house league, IP, they're young, but I'll get in the truck with them and I'll bite my tongue on, like, I thought he could have been better. I thought my daughter could have been better on this. I'm like, did you have fun today? Yeah, it was great. Yeah. You're awesome. Yeah, you played really good. You back checked hard or whatever it is, right? Kind of comment on some things that they worked hard at. And to your point, like, now I know as they get more, and this is the hard part. Right now it's easy because they're young. They're like, who cares? They fall down, it's not a big deal. But I think it's harder, and this is more of a question for you, but as they get to, like, girls AA and guys AAA, and they're, like, playing highest level that they can play. Yeah. I think as a dad, you not that you're thinking, oh, my guy's going to play in the NHL or my girl's going to get a scholarship or, play on the Olympic team, but you just want them to be good. As a dad, you're passionate. As a mom, you're passionate.
You want them to be the best they can be, right. I think, is what you want, totally. Right? I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with pushing or teaching or being firm or trying to talk to them about different things. But I just don't think it can be 5 times a week, after every practice, before every practice, after every practice, before every game, after every game. I found, just like anything, say your goalie has a bad night. Say my goalie has a bad night at U Sport. Say let's in 6, I have to pull him. Do you think the best time to talk to him about that is right after the game? Hey, come on in, let's have a talk before you get changed. No, and I think it's the same can be with your kids. I mean, if you want to get the best messaging or have the best conversations, it's probably somewhere than in the car or in the rink. It's probably at home on a Sunday on an off day or on a Monday night when they're just sitting down doing homework. That's probably when you can have your best conversations with them about whatever it might happen to be, not 5 minutes after the game. Like I always would say, hey, what'd the coach say in the dressing room? I can't remember. Like how much are they going to remember the next day, right? Like, I know, that might be a bad example, but
it's true.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like this is 20 minutes after the game. So I just think we can as parents, we can change what we do a little bit. And I know it's hard because you want the best for it. You want everything to be fair and I know that, I'm maybe sometimes I don't take my own advice because, try to be involved and help. But I mean, in general, that's what I would say. And it's a lot like life, right? You want your kids make a mistake in life about something. You're not going to just leave it. You want to teach them. You want to, have them be the best they can be. And it's the same in sport, obviously. But I think you can, it's not something you need to talk about every day with them. You have to pick your battle, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. I think marriage helps with that too, right? Because you just pick your battle. Sometimes you don't say what you want to say. You want to avoid that conflict.
Exactly. Exactly.
I was very fortunate growing up with a mom and dad who were very involved and very supportive, but I never ever left the rink worried about getting in the car or played a bad game and been like, oh man, my dad's going to give it to me. Ever. My dad was almost too positive. I'd be more hard on myself than my dad was on me ever. And my mom, same thing. And I was very fortunate I didn't know it at the time, but now looking back on it, I knew I had buddies that were getting yelled at because we talk about it and like, oh man, my dad yelled at me for an hour after the game. Like, and to your point, like, how fun is hockey when you're getting yelled at all the time?
And you know what? And like I say, I can learn a lot because I know I've probably done that with both. I mean, I don't know about an hour, but I know that we're probably times my kids walk to the car worried about what I was going to say, and looking back, that's probably wrong. You know what I mean? Sure. And I'm sure it probably happens, and not that you can't, like kid cross checks a guy from behind and takes a 5-minute major. Yeah, I mean that's you got to address a little different than maybe being -2 and not picking up your guy in the winning goal, right? Like, and so that's where hopefully you got to allow the coach as the coach and the parents to be the the parents to be the parent, right? And I have to give my dad a lot of credit because he was the exact same way. Like I never remember him yelling at me, yelling at the arena, knocking on the glass, whatever. Never remember. I just car rides. I was never scared to come to the car. Yeah. Hey, doesn't matter what I did. He, good game, right? Like good game. And so, but I think that's changed a lot in today's day and age as we see parents, and I know it's tough because it's your blood, your kid, your family, and you want them to do well and be the best. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we can maybe approach or handle it a little different way.
I agree. And I've joked with many parents about this, but I've never had my dad, like when I suck at work, like maybe I sent the wrong email out or I'm under budget or over budget on something. I've never had my dad knock on the door and give me shit for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so you're at work at the office and you're watching Netflix because you don't want to do your work at that. Yeah. No one's coming to yell at you at work, right? No. So why are you banging on the glass with your kid's 8 years old on the ice trying to play hockey? Like, leave him alone. Yeah. Let him do his thing. Let him have fun. Be encouraging. And I think that's a big, big thing. My thing with, and I'm a lot like you probably, like I'm competitive. I'm passionate. I want my kids to be good at running. I want my kids to hit a ball hard. I want all that stuff. Yep. And one thing I always want them to do is enjoy going to the rink, enjoy going to the soccer pitch, enjoy that process, have fun. Yep. I don't want it to be a crappy environment for them where they're like, oh man, this has got bad negative vibe around it. Like, let's have fun going to the rink. Let's have fun leaving the rink, Yeah. And it's not easy. So for any parent out there, like, it's not easy to do sometimes, man. Cause
it's very hard. And I think just, and I can speak to it, I think a little bit more just because I want to say almost all the way through it. Well, it's interesting to hear from you. Yeah, because you've gone through it, so you can reflect a little bit and say, well, I could have done this better. And I've been on the other side, right? Not only as a professional coach, but a minor hockey coach. And I know it's that's a tough job. There's lots of, I think especially as you get into the draft eligible years and, there's a lot of pressure on those coaches to do a lot of things and to play people the right. It's a tough job. Yeah. It's a tough job being not only a parent, but a minor hockey coach. Right. And, I think I've learned, I almost wish I could go back and do it all over again.
Yeah. So for sure. One thing I wanted to touch on too, and more for like young, right now we have Wade Russell, who was just on the podcast the other day. We were talking about a bunch of different stuff, but Wade kind of went through the kind of similar to you. He finished up junior and realized, I think I want to get into like the skill development side of it and the coaching side of it and stuff. So for you, when did you say, I don't think I'm going to be a gym teacher. I think I'm going to become a full-time coach? Because I know back then, gym teacher would have full pension, would have had better money, whereas the assistant coach wasn't going to pay very well. But when did you kind of make that decision that, I'm going to pursue coaching and I kind of push this a little bit?
It was probably a little bit after, that time in doing my master's, almost after my time in Europe. So believe it or not, after I did my master's with Western, I had that great experience there for 2 years. I actually was fortunate enough to get into teachers college. Okay. So I went to Althouse here in London to get my Bachelor of Education after I got my master's, because at that point I really didn't know about
just keeping
coaching.
Options open.
Yeah, I didn't even think about professional coaching. I just said, hey, I learned a lot. And I was, that year I coached, or a year I went to Althouse and did my Bachelor of Ed. I was fortunate enough to get hired to coach the Almer Aces in the Western Junior B League, which played London, Sarnia, St. Thomas, St. Mary's. So I was pretty young at that age too, or that time to be going to teachers college and to be coaching junior B. And so I was only maybe 3 years older than the players I was coaching. So still at that time, I thought it was just a pastime, a hobby I'd love. And then as I finished my Bachelor of Ed at Althouse, I was coming back to Almer to coach the second year and, maybe get paid a little bit of money to do it, but I was interviewing for full-time teaching jobs. And then Barry Martinelli called me, who was a coach of Western, and it was in Europe, said, hey, the team I was coaching, they're looking for a young coach. They don't have a lot of money, and they want just a young Canadian coach to go over. So I did a phone interview with them and was fortunate enough, like within a couple weeks, packing my bags and going over there. And I, the one person that we haven't mentioned, and I know we probably should in this, is our spouses. Because if you're in our industry, doing not there at nights, not there in the mornings, in Washington, in Hershey, in Thunder Bay, like you have to have a very supportive spouse with your family. And that started right in my first year going over to Europe because Trish and I were engaged, and she gave up a full-time teaching job to go over to Europe with me. Wow. So still when we went over there, I was coaching professionally, but I didn't know it was going to be my career.
Yeah.
I still thought, I'll go over, enjoy this, make some money, have a great experience. And then, I still always have kind of teaching in my back pocket. And I spent 3 years there. And probably as I got into the third year, I said, this is something I could probably do.
And was Trish always on board with it? Like she was good with?
Like incredibly supportive. Yeah. Like and we went through, you talk about hills, like my first year in Europe, I kind of mentioned the pro team didn't have a lot of money. We had to fly to a lot of our games, which took a lot of money. We weren't a great team, so we didn't have a ton of fans, right? So, I remember getting our hydro turned off at the apartment we lived at, Trish and I. We come home one day, the hydro was off. I remember getting our car repossessed because they weren't paying the lease payment on it. Right. So there were many challenges. I remember, having a little mini fridge for your whole time over there, not a big fridge that we're used to, right? So a lot of little things happen, little hills and valleys that we went through. But, she was always incredibly supportive and, has really been supportive to this day because I've never, I interviewed for a job out at University of Lethbridge, interviewed at Western, interviewed, I think, for a couple of BCHL jobs after that third year. And kind of at that time, I knew, okay, this is what this is what I would like to do for my, my career, and then ended up landing at Western again with Barry and been there ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. I think you brought up a really good point, and this is a great plug. So we'll make sure our wives listen to just this. I'll send just this section.
Trish won't. Yeah. She won't. No, I don't think she was at one game this year, so or this past year, so she won't be listening.
It's same with Jenna though. Jenna could care less if I ever put skates on again.
Exactly.
Does not care about it. But I think like anybody who's going to coach minor hockey or get into it, even as you're a dad and you play it and you're going to coach, and it is a ton of time. Whether it's minor hockey, whether it's what you do or I do. It's a lot of time, man. So I think it is a discussion to have with your wife. And I remember when I went over and coached over in St. John, New Brunswick in the Q, an awesome year. I realized at that point, though, that I'd love to coach. I loved coaching. And I'd had an opportunity with you as well and came back and helped you out a little bit. And it was awesome. And I loved coaching, but I realized that I think the skill side is what I'm more passionate about.
Right.
And I'm glad I went and coached because it kind of gave me an idea of like what I wanted to do or what I didn't want to do. And I met Jenna out there, and when I came back, she came back 6 months later, but I was in the crux of like a busy time, and it was crazy as far as time on the ice and all that stuff. But I remember telling her, like, this is kind of my life. Like, I don't know. I'm hoping it'll get better than this, but I think this is going to be it for a while to get out of this trench.
Well, and wasn't that at the original time you were building TPH too? When you come back,
I just started. So my business was terrible.
You were like 18 hours a day at the rink, I remember, right?
It was long days, and I was basically living off a line of credit. So I had no money. Like, it was not like, and I had a house at the time that I bought. Back then it wasn't crazy. I had enough to throw a down payment on it, which was very minimal. But I was literally like, borrowing money off my line of credit to pay my mortgage, to repay my line. Like it was, so that's when I met Jen and she moved in with me and stuff. I'm like, this is my life. And if you don't like this and you don't like the hours after this summer, then no problem. I get it. But this is what I'm going to do. I love doing it, So, but to your point, like I've never come home after a road trip or after flying somewhere and had that disgruntled, oh, you've been gone all week here, the kids, get out, I'm going away. Like never, which has been unbelievable, So I think it is a conversation to have as a coach if you want to get into it.
Oh, it's impactful on your family for sure. Yeah. And I think it's not just the time at the rink, as it's all the other time. You're thinking about it driving, you're thinking about it while you're walking the dog, you might be thinking about the dinner table, right? So I think one of the things I've been able to do over my career is I'm not perfect at it yet, but still being able to leave coaching or hockey at the rink or in the car and try to, when you're home, you're home.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So been a little bit better at that. And I think that, I know you've been, you've built a great business and you travel a lot, but the one thing that I think is fortunate about my position is that although it's a 12-month-a-year job, there is some flexibility in the spring and summer to be able to spend a little more time with your family.
Yeah, for
right.
Sure.
It's not like it's a 9 to 5 job, 12 months a year. You're really busy, from end of August to end of April, but then there's a little bit of flexibility to do some things in the spring and summer to give some of that time back to the family, which is I think they've appreciated.
Oh, definitely.
Now, they haven't enjoyed me being home during the last 6 months, obviously. They're ready for us to get back to practice for sure.
You've banked too many hours now. Right?
Exactly. Are you going to work today? No.
Yeah, and then the whole family leaves. Everyone just got some stuff to do all of a sudden.
I'm just in the garage.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate the fact that obviously came in and some awesome information and insight on stuff. The one thing I want to leave this with is, we talked about this a little bit before, and I tell people this all the time whenever I get a chance to, but the one thing with U Sport hockey is it's probably one of the best kept secrets in hockey as far as the level, the compete, the quality of hockey, how good it is. And I was joking earlier before the podcast, I've had so many parents over the years come up to me and say, oh, if my kid could just get a scholarship, if my kid could just play college hockey, that'd be great. I don't think parents realize how hard it is. Number one, to get a scholarship, which, Canadian universities do give scholarships, whether it's States or Canada, but number one, how hard it is to get a scholarship. Number two, how competitive it is to get a scholarship. And I've been involved with your program for years, and I've seen a lot of college hockey stateside and Canada side, but the quality of hockey is unbelievable. And you must have seen such a shift over your career on how much more dedicated the guys are, how much more bought in they are, how many more guys want to maybe try to go play pro after. And there are a lot of guys, let's be honest, in U Sport that want to get a degree and go work, which is awesome. They're great players. They're awesome. They're dedicated. They work their tail off when they're at the rink, but when they're done, they want to go start their life, which is totally fine. But how much has that shifted over the years where, you've got way more players now that are dialed in, that are dedicated, that want to push kind of a little bit further on?
Yeah, I think it's just like the rest of hockey or development, for example. Like, I think, 15, 20 years ago, where was TPH? Look where it is now. Like, the business, right? Like, I do think, we're a kind of a microcosm of society in a little bit, is that things have changed. There's much more dedication to strength and conditioning. I mean, that's first and foremost, right? Yeah. Like, there's so much more dedication to doing that, realizing that, being a great player, you have to be a great athlete, which means you have to be strong, you have to be well conditioned. And that's something that probably early in my career, wasn't even a talking point, 20 years ago, right? And I think everybody knows that, but that aspect has really changed, where guys have workouts on their phones now, they log in. I mean, it's changed incredibly. So, first of all, U Sport is men playing, because it's 20, for the most part, the youngest player is 20 years old. So it's men playing. And I do think that from a physicality and competitive standpoint, the players coming from junior out of overage and junior playing against 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, that's a big change coming to U Sport, where you're playing against, players up to 26, 27 years old. So all men, all with a huge focus on strength and conditioning. So that's one of the big changes. And you're right, it's because there's not 65 games, because there's only 28 games a year, the competitiveness within those 2 games every weekend is huge. There's not 3 and 3. You're not playing Wednesday, then Friday, Sunday, then Tuesday, like in a lot of junior leagues. Like, it's Friday, Saturday. These are our games. And because the lineups are obviously expanded, like our rosters of 27, there's a lot of fight to get in those, be one of the 20 dressing. So U Sport hockey has improved immensely, both on the ice and off the ice. In the time I've been we've been from CIU to CIS now to U Sport over 22, 23 years. So it's improved a great deal. And I think I would say we're almost on par with a lot of the NCAA programs. Sure. We don't have the money or the number of staff there, but in terms of, when we're playing exhibition games against those NCAA programs, I mean, Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, Omaha, Miami, Ohio, Harvard, Yale, whoever it may be, they're very competitive games, very, very equal. So it is a tough level to get to, for sure. And you want to be a great person, a great athlete, and a great player, and great academically to sort of get there, which a lot of things do to aspire to and to work at over a course of a young man's career. And I guess what I'm saying, it's not just about their slap shot, be a good person, focus on school, and, get into the gym as you're a junior player, and focus on those things. And hopefully as you graduate junior, you've got a good chance to move on to the NCAA or U Sport.
Yeah, no, and I think like a lot of times we look at NCAA as kind of being up here, we look at U Sport as being a little bit lower, and I think the one thing that separates those two, you said it, is that budget. Like, let's be honest, right? Like these
facilities, staff, it's all related to money, right?
Yeah,
it's all related to money.
Exactly. If some of these universities in Canada had the amount of money that they have, and a lot of it, there's a lot of different reasons for that, whether it's alumni, whether it's football teams, whether it's whatever, right? But I think that's a big piece of that separation. The last thing I want to ask, and kind of leave over here, but the big stigma around playing major junior hockey, playing U Sport is, you got to play major junior. You got to be from the OHL or the Dub or the Q. I've been around a long time with you, and there's a lot of junior A, junior B players that have got on your roster and been like captains, been assistant captains, had an opportunity to play. So I think the biggest thing I want to lead this with is, if you are a AA player or a AAA player in Bantam, and maybe you're not going to be a high draft pick or you're not going to play in the OHL, this to me is something to strive for. Whether it's NCAA or it's U Sport, I think this is something that is attainable. So don't think, oh man, I didn't play in the OHL, there's no way I can play,
for sure,
Canadian University. And I just wanted you to touch on that a little bit as far as when you are recruiting, and I know you've got some really good help with guys like Hodgie and different people that are looking at different areas of the country for these players. What are some of the things because I know you're scouting junior A, tier 2, I know you're scouting junior B, and obviously I think the Q, the O, and the WHL are not easier to scout, but there's only like 3 players on those teams that really you guys are keying in on, right? And every school is keying in on those kids, so you know who the best of the best are. You kind of have them tiered off, I'm sure. But I think where you build your program is finding those like little kind of diamonds in the rough, right? Where you get some of these players that maybe aren't heavily recruited. That you're like, okay, this
for sure. And I think our program is always a split of, say, and we keep using the term junior B, but tier 2 junior A players and CHL players. It's a huge split, and I think we're usually at Western, we're top heavy CHL, but a lot of programs aren't. Whether it's UOIT, Waterloo, even Laurier's got a great program too, and I mean they would be skewed the other way, where they're top heavy. Tier 2 junior A player. So if you're playing as an overage player in, tier 2 junior A, you probably have an opportunity to play U Sport somewhere around the country. Yeah. And, in terms of, so you don't just have to play major junior, you don't have to play major junior for sure. I think that the number one thing we probably look for right now is competitiveness. I think when you look at what it takes to play at our level, competitiveness is really important. Consistency of your effort and battle level and heart, like kind of shift in, shift out. And I think, after that, it's probably skill and skating. We don't really look at size anymore. It doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are. If you're competitive and got good skill and you can skate well, we'd really, we'd be interested in you as an overage player. And then I think the other 2 aspects of that, the other 2 silos would be, you got to be a good student, and that's the other thing I think some people kind of forget during their junior career is the academic side, but you've got to be a pretty good student to get into U Sport, not just a good player. And then the thing we learn about the most during because I can go and see how a player's skating and competitiveness and skill is in a game, but we want them to be good people. And that's one thing we really strive to bring into our program is good people, because unlike junior, you can't trade kids if they don't work out. You want to, or if a kid leaves your school, a player leaves your school, it impacts their academics too, if they're transferring from our school to somewhere else. So you really want to make sure that you have good people in your program. And so you try to learn a lot about them as people and how they live and do they live right. And you and I have had lots of conversations about people here that I've got references from you on kids and, hey, how are they when they're 16? There's a lot of things like that it's not just, what you do on the ice, it's what you do off the ice that'll play a role in you getting to the next level. But I think competitiveness, skill, and skating, I think those 3 for us are the top 3 probably in that order.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice for any young kid, because a lot of times I know back when I played, it was size. That was a big thing, right? Yeah. And I think even now, now today more than ever, skating, you don't have to be a sexy skater anymore. You just have to be able to get places, and you got to have the skill to be able to make plays and create time and space and all that kind of stuff. And I agree, the competitiveness, I think, is the biggest piece of hockey right now, is who can compete and who can be consistently competing every night, right? bring it every night, which is
and that comes with two things we've talked about: the mental side of things as well as your conditioning level.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a hockey thing. That's a mental thing and a gym thing, right? How hard are you competing every night? And I think that's one of the toughest things that junior players learn when they come to our levels: the competitiveness, day in, day out, of what has to happen to be successful when you're battling men, because the scores at our games aren't 7-6 very often.
Right.
You know, they're 3-2, 4-3, 2-1. I mean, it's grown a little bit, but there's not a lot of goals.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of space on the ice. And I mean, I think the one thing that's changed a little bit is, you know, physicality is, I do think it's left the game a little bit. I think there is still an element there of physicality in the game, and especially as you get into the playoffs for sure. But I think day in, day out, it's about position, stick work, angling, you know, putting your, you know, skating, pivot, like it's a lot of those things that become important to, you know, being a good player and, you know, good teammate and being relied on, you know, by your coach.
Yeah, no, definitely. So you guys aren't practicing hitting a lot in practice? You guys aren't lining up behind the net?
Especially not with 6 feet given to everybody, right?
Yeah,
you
right.
Know,
so, tough times right now for contact.
I wanted to say that one other thing before we finish, Blazer,
sure,
and I think one of the things that, you know, often goes forgotten, and even by me, is, you know, you talk about minor hockey teams and you talk about the head coach, we forget about all the staff.
Sure.
You know, whether it's the manager booking hotels, or in my case, like, you know, you flying over for an hour skill work, Patrick Ouellette, you know, Wade, you mentioned, like, you know, we've got we've had a great history of an unbelievable staff in our program. And again, great people, great hockey minds for the most part. It's, you know, it doesn't matter what sport you're in, whether it's minor hockey, U Sport, NCAA, the staff you have goes a long way to the success of your program. So just a quick shout out, not only to our wives, obviously, but to all the wonderful staff that we have involved at Western and in London here, helping, you know, build hockey and providing opportunities for young men and kids.
No, it's great. And like, I don't want to pump your tires here because your head's already big enough, but I think the big thing too, though, and this goes to minor hockey, to junior, to CIS. And I've known you for a long time, Clarke, but you've always created a fun environment, just talking coaching staff, right? So, and we know this, I don't want to get into this, but, you know, there's not a lot of budget there for 3 assistant coaches, a video coach, and all a strength coach and all this stuff, right? So you've managed to do it on a shoestring budget a little bit, but you've made it a fun environment where people want to get involved, people want to be around, and people want to give their time, and you know, and so that is huge. And I think if the message here can be, in minor hockey, you're coaching a minor hockey team, make it fun.
Yeah.
Why is it not fun to come to the rink? Yeah. Like, and I've been involved at the NHL level, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I go in after a win, it's not fun. Yeah. No one's talking, everyone's sitting around, like, and I've been in other locker rooms where you go in after a win, it's like, hey boys, here, have a beer. That was awesome. Did you see that? And, you know, and win, loss, whatever. It's a fun environment, man. And whoever gets into coaching, whether it's minor hockey, whatever, do it because you want to do it. You enjoy it, and you're doing it for the right reason. What are those reasons? Yeah. It's for the kids. It's for the young men. It's for the young women. You know what I mean? It's for that. It's not for you. It's not, you know, but make it fun. And I think you've done a good job of that, and that's why you're getting good people to be involved.
And culture building is as important as building your breakout system or D-zone system or power play system.
Sure.
And unfortunately, there's not as much time spent on culture building in minor hockey as there probably should be. And that's just coming to the rink, having a good dressing room, having good people on the ice, like having kids not screaming at each other, right? Like, pass me the puck. Like, you know, hey, you know what I mean? Like, I think culture building is something that's really, really important in minor hockey, and at all levels. And you can always do a better job. We can always do a better job, even where we are. Even as a professional coach, you can always do a better job. But usually the most successful teams have the best cultures.
For sure. No, and I think that's something that we should all work at, whether we're coaching minor hockey or even at work, right? In the office, whatever that is. Like, and I mean, you've been around enough rinks. Like, how bad is the culture in some of the rinks sometimes where you just, and I'm not knocking rinks, but you know, when this guy's not talking to this guy, this rink guy won't give you an extra second after. You know what I mean? It's just, and then some rinks have gone to, man, it's unbelievable. The guys are awesome. Hey, how you doing? Oh, you know, almost like, thank you for renting our ice. And like, it's great, you know? And so I think anywhere you go, it's just creating that culture, and that environment changes. It just makes it so much better.
For example, for this podcast, like, I mean, going forward, there was no food for the guests or anything like that.
True. No grapes.
Like, there was nothing, no grapes, coffee, muffins.
Well, my budget got cut. So actually, you had to bring the coffee.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. I even brought the coffee. Yeah.
I thought it was fine. I got coffee out of it. It's all good. It's all good. Listen, buddy, I really appreciate it, man. This is awesome, and tons of great content there, which I love, and I think it's some good advice for myself. This is why I do this. It's only for me. So
we're always learning as coaches, right? That's
exactly.
for sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, buddy. Thanks, man. To kind of raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.